Hey everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us through this Jedi series here. We're going to keep the series going with the conscious characters. There's going to be more to come, but thank you if you watched so far. Last episode we did was on Instagram, Source and Force, and the last YouTube as well, Source and versus the Force. Comparisons and the difference of the new teachings of the Source, that is, and the old teachings of the Force. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead and tune in, because that is the best thing that I can think of, cinematically at least, to compare my belief system to, because it's very much so like an energetic belief system, kind of like, almost like Buddhism, but it's a less detachment, and I'll get to that in probably a different video, but this is just going to be about Source right now and what kind of led me to that current belief system, right? Because throughout a conscious man's life, that is, you're constantly asking questions about how things work, so you can get a better understanding of what to do next, how to act, right? As a better, more conscious human being, move towards the light instead of the dark, right? So for me, I just wanted the truth, right? That's it. I've always just wanted the truth. And so the truth for me and the truth for someone else might be different. That's kind of what beliefs are, right? Your truth is different from my truth. Your beliefs are different from my beliefs. But there is only one truth, really, right? So, but you could say that, no, there's not. There's infinite number of truths and beliefs, right? So it's like a weird paradox, but yeah, so I mean, but it works kind of like gravity, though. It's like some people don't believe in gravity, but you could see this lightsaber going up and down. No matter what I do, it's going to come down unless I learn some Jedi telekinesis. But that's a truth. That's a collective truth that we can all agree on, right? That I'm catching this. I could flip it. It's going to come down. Might come down in a different way, but that truth, right? That truth is going to stay the same. So there are certain laws, truths that are just that, universe, that, and that in science becomes a law, right? A law. So essentially, and then when I get into this video, I want you to know, before I start digging into my spiritual beliefs and what led me there, I loved everybody, okay? Want to let you know that, no matter what you believe, okay? There's a song, and I can't remember, I keep forgetting to look it up, but it's called Love Is My Religion, and it's obviously love is not a religion, right? But if I could describe my religion, right now, it would just be love, okay? So essentially, I'm not going to try to offend anybody with what I'm saying. I'm just trying to tell you what led me to my belief system, okay? So we're going to start off really quickly before I get any further about any off subject. What got me here? What got me to this belief system, right? This is almost like the Force, okay? So childhood, I grew up Christian, okay? I grew up, just asking a lot of questions as a Christian. Too many questions, some might say. So just a number of questions I like to just tell people that I ask when I'm telling them about, number one question. Oh, well, this isn't the number one. This is we'll go in order. This is there's two major questions that just had me scratching my head, right? And if you're Bible thumping, let's talk. I want to talk. I want to talk about your beliefs, dude. I love talking about beliefs to actual people that are scholarly, like, and know scripture, because they like to relate it back to scripture. And I love scripture too, because it comes up and it's like, that means, this parable is meaning this, and you can relate that to your life. Okay. So I'm not bagging on scripture, but one question I asked when I was in Christian school and Bible study a lot, and I didn't really get the answers that I wanted, is where do aborted babies go, or babies, that don't fully make it here into this realm, where do they go? And then some people say, they get to grow up at a lot of people say they get to grow up at a certain age in heaven. What do they look like in heaven too, is another thing that I asked, and then they would say they grew up, and then, a lot of them say they grew up to a certain age, and then one person said that they actually got another chance, like God could give them another chance. I specifically remember that, and I was like, what? Isn't that like kind of like reincarnation? Anyways, that was a pastor that told me that, and I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of people that, that's wrong, right, exactly. But then another, question that I asked, because I was really concerned about people getting saved, right? And that's the whole thing. The whole basis of Christianity is you want to get people saved with the power of Jesus, right? So they accept Jesus in their heart, which we all did if you were a Christian, right? And then you were saved, you get to go to lasting salvation. The question I had was, obviously people talk about this a lot, Aboriginals, people that haven't heard the word, but the main question I had, because I was just concerned about all life, right? Aliens. If just say we discovered a different species on a different planet, are their souls just damned for like all eternity, or do they get their own Jesus? Like, the Greys get their own Jesus. The reptiles get their own Jesus, and they need it, not right. Pleiadians, everybody get their own Jesus. And then crickets for like a second, but then it always turned into, they didn't, what was one of them? There's no alien life out there. You don't have to worry about that, right? That's a great one. There was another one that was like, we're the only planet with human life, like in all. God only created the earth with conscious life, kind of, So I was like, that's interesting. So a lot of different answers from different people that I would get, right? In Christianity and all religion, really. And it was almost like everyone was just making up their own kind of like version of it, right? That they thought was cool. Or that they thought was the best one, right? And then, so I think that's what religion, like, just turns a lot of people off, because you don't get what you get with this, which is just like all is one type of thing, but that's the kind of different conversation. But you get more of like a us versus them, with religion. And it's like, it's not us versus them. That's what they're saying. It's, Jesus and everybody, or, Allah and everybody, or Muhammad and everybody, or, if you're in the Zeta Reticula, Zeta Ticula, Micula Picula, you take your pick. And that's what they're going to say. It's about them and everybody else, right? And everybody, and bringing everyone together around their God, right? And that's what really turned me off too. It's just like, what about them? What about them? And they're like, they had their chance, and I'm like, no. And so I'm just like, this whole time in my head throughout, I just think a lot. I think too much, right? Nah, you can never think too much, right? You just need to think in the right places. But essentially, I was just thinking about, what my belief system is, and I lost it. And I'm gonna tell you what I lost it. It's football and basketball and sports, and just, alcohol, drugs in high school. Like that was my God, was just hanging out with friends, and you lose yourself as a young man, and you don't have any spiritual beliefs or anything like that, or any like kind of like, I had morals, like, but I didn't have that grounded spiritual system that I needed, that I could believe in, because I had too many questions. And I feel like a lot of people have that about religion, right? And so me talking about this is because of that, right? Because I really just want people to see, if you don't have like a belief system, religion, like this could be where you want to land here, because this is like all inclusive, right? This is all inclusive of everything. This is everything. This is all the source of all creation. Okay, so like I said, before I talk about it, I want to talk about where we get. So right now we're in high school, drinking, smoking, doing just whatever I want. There is no killing ego. I am the ego. Okay, I'm walking around, big man on campus, varsity, right? You know if you're on varsity, right? Varsity. And then I get to college, right, and just have a complete like destruction of your ego, right? Because I said in my last video that I wasn't doing nothing, right? I wasn't doing basketball, wasn't doing football, wasn't doing sports. So my gods, everything that I was like, quote unquote, worshiping at the time, they all fell because they were earthly things, right? Oh, I just squeaked. Of course I squeaked when I said earthly things. Never squeak, no. Sometimes men squeak. That's just some more coffee. But earthly things are a squealy thing to talk about, because you don't want to be stuck in them, or else that's what you'll be. It's just a materialistic person, and then once you lose those material things, what do you have? Not a lot of. So started developing a little bit of spiritual beliefs in college due to, I met we call him the Myth. This dude was named, I won't say his name because I don't know what it was, but we called him AZ. AZ, if you ever see this video, please reach out to me, bro. We think you're a myth still. We think you were just like a body of light and then you just disappeared, man. If you ever see this, come back. But I met this guy in college, very much introduced me to meditation, relaxing the nervous system, manifestation, and, all the good stuff. So that kind of led me to my beliefs about, I watched the movie The Secret too, and I was studying all about, world religions, anthropology, and all my electives, and I just found that all of them, like I said, they all want you to kind of center their focus on worshiping, and not finding your inner power. And I feel like that is what, like, meditation and in having intent with your meditation and practice was doing at that time. It was helping me find kind of a belief system, right? So if you want to like manifest something, like I said, I watched the movie The Secret before I started like meditating on all of this, and then that movie is just like, if you haven't seen it, the power of thought, basically, right? So I had basically developed a belief system of, your thoughts become things. I even had it, I think on my Twitter at one point, I was like, your thoughts become things, that was my like little headline. Because that's my belief system was. And then, through meditation and through other things, you can, focus more on the belief, right? And get that. But I didn't really have like, kind of like a higher power system, right? I didn't think about anything really, but then this guy started talking about synchronicity, right? And how things line up, and that's kind of what I'll get into right here after this video. But synchronicity, is things that line up that are just like, there's no way. The possibilities of this lining up in this manner to work out for me in this way, this many times, plus all the signs that if you pay attention, it has to be a cosmic force for good, right? And so that's kind of like what I developed, but not necessarily source. It was just more of like the universe, right? So I would just like, people like thank the universe, be grateful, you know, just send that energy out there type of thing. And then, you know, just, I didn't really think about the dark side, right, of that, of not necessarily like, just like the dark side in general. Like I was doing practices that weren't aligned with that, you know, like drinking and just partying. And it was kind of just like a, you know, you're going back and forth type of thing. So it led me to just troubled things in my life, you know, like I remember I got a minor in consumption. I manifested that. I'm not even kidding. I walked out of this house and then this cop was like, "You're getting an MIC." And I was like, "What?" And he had all my friends there, and like, dude didn't even know and then my friend like behind me just like dipped back in the house and he tried to like chase him. Crazy, right? But that's the kind of stuff that I was doing. And then I would go and hang out with my friend AZ and just, you know, after like some crazy party weekend, you know, at the Grove, that's what we called our party place at NAU. And then I would go and just meditate and, you know, so it was like a complete, like, you know, balanced, unbalanced lifestyle, right? And then even like, I would go like, this dude was like crazy raw vegan, right? I would go eat like Taco Bell. And then this dude would be like, "Hey, let's go meditate and eat like at this crazy raw vegan place in Sedona," right? And I was like, let's do it, you know? So I was living two different lifestyles in college, but it was leaning more towards of my current belief system and a more positive belief system. Any belief system was good, right? So I had that belief system. Fast forward to, you know, when I had kids, same thing, right? But not necessarily doing the techniques that I need to do to move me to the next level, right? So I kind of lost meditation and a lot of things when I moved into like the corporate world and just started working a lot, right? That happens. And so I was just not really doing anything. Fast forward to about when I stopped drinking 7 years ago, wasn't really into like meditation too much back into it, but did have like more like a positive affirmation side and like it brought back the manifestation like techniques, like using manifestation, like just thinking positively and to move me to the next level of what I want to be, right? Want to get a new job, want to just think that you're going to have it and you'll have it, right? So I basically brought back that belief system and then started manifesting, you know, great things, but didn't have like a rooted belief system still, just kind of like sending it out to the universe. Okay. And fast forward to last year. Okay. Well, let's just say 3 years ago when 3 years ago, this startup company fired half of its employees, me being one of them. I was looking for a job, okay, everywhere. And then one of the job interviews was gonna make like half of what I make right now. So I had an interview for that job and I fell asleep right during the interview. And I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I missed it. And then I was like, maybe it was just meant to be, right? Just thinking like, okay, you know what? I didn't want to go into the office. I want to work from home and I want to make, you know, enough money to support my family, 6 figures, whatever. So then I applied to this job that I currently have, and the way it worked out was just insane. It had to be source. Everything that lined up had to be God, higher power, because, and this is what I'm saying, the way things work out, you make it just like it. I like to say it's like just like a mycelium web of conscious connecting, so everything works out for the better. And that is what happens in my life, especially when I focus on the good, love, and peace and happiness. And what I've noticed, right, And just even when something does happen, fight for the good, fight for the love, fight for the, that good joy feeling back. And then the universe rewards me, so the same thing that happened with this house. My credit was horrible. I didn't think I was going to be in a house for years, for 10 years. I was in an apartment 3 years ago, 2 years ago actually. And before I moved into this house, and I was like, okay, my next step is to rent. And then, I kind of changed my thought process, and I'm like, we can buy, like, we're going to be in a house no matter what. I would love to buy. And I kind of just put that out there, but if I can just get in a house, whatever. Right. And then so fast forward to a couple months later, my mom texts me, hey, my realtor found this great house for you. Let's go take a look, and then, I didn't think I was going to apply for credit. We found a way. Okay. And it just, the way it worked out, and then we're in a house, and it has to be God, has to be source, has to be something. There has to be something that's connecting us all, everything, right? And then I even got a sign when I was doing my morning meditation. There was 2 hummingbirds. I never ever, and I was wearing this outfit too, like a freaking Jedi master out there meditating, right? I'm sure if my neighbors saw me, they'd be like, what? And then these 2 hummingbirds just like flying in front of my face, and I just hear, and I open my eyes, and there's these 2 hummingbirds just like, and they like look at me and just fly off. And I'm like, in my heart, I'm like, oh my God, that was source, that was me, that was, everything. I don't know what it was, God, job, the Most High. And then I've never seen this before, 1 hummingbird just like pulled up on my gate, that I always show out there. And my heart just like exploded. It was like the sun, the hummingbird, and then me, and then in the Jedi costume, right? And then just like, and I'm like in awe, right? And that's what it is, and that was for my eyes to see only. I was like, I wish I had a camera, but I was like, in my mind, I was like, that was for my eyes to see only. It's beautiful. I love life. Cut it there. I'll be back to talk about business.